The Armored Core 6 Map Exploration Journey. Hi, I'm the fun uncle, the Watchman, and I'm here to just discuss and show my journey through Armored Core 6 whilst intentionally exploring it. And I kind of think that a lot of it is interesting enough to share, bring up, or even just be like, hey, check out how stupid I am on this one specific thing. God, I feel dumb. So I'm hoping everyone will enjoy what I've got to share here, because I've put a lot of work into exploring the maps, and I think there's actually a lot that is easy to miss. Who am I and why am I doing this? Well, like I said, I'm the Watchman. And basically, like I said, I wanted to just share what I found, what I explored. And there's lots of little things that I noticed that, because I don't think it would be easily noticed, I think it's worth sharing. And a lot of what I was looking at, I found quite interesting in terms of consistency and what was or wasn't where I expected. And there were some things that just straight up weren't there at all, which I'll get into as we go on. Now, exploring the map was not done with mods or dev commands or anything else like that. All I did was go around in my AC. And this AC is a beautiful thing, if I say so myself, where its job is basically, in terms of exploration, hovering and traveling around really efficiently, being able to be quick when I want it to be, and just generally being able to get wherever I want it. It's highly mobile, and that's the goal. And so you can see the build up on the screen, and this is just to show you this is what I used. Form your own opinion on it if you want, but I want to make it very clear, at no point did I go out of bounds in the game. I didn't mod it, nothing, just straight exploration as a regular player. What was I looking for? The connected regions in Bellius, trying to see where they all were in relation to each other. The larger PCA-based layout, because I thought it was really cool that it was all together. Any other connected areas, like underground or in space, because Dark Souls maps, for example, often have very interesting level design in such a way that you can see the connectivity as you're going. Reference points in reused area is a wonderful thing in this game. They're big, they're obvious, and you just see them and you're like, oh, I know where I am now. And that's the beauty of them, and they're the main thing I'm looking for. When I'm exploring everything else, that's my main go-to of what I'm looking for first. Other things I found or tried to look for was specifically actually Honest Brute and the Rail Cannon area, because I actually didn't know where it was initially. And it wasn't until I intentionally tried to figure out where it was that I was like, oh, okay. And I'll get into that in a little while as well. With regards to the map layout, I was actually also very curious to see how the game maps displayed things compared to where they actually were in relation to each other. So with one map zone being this far away on the big map, but actually seeming really close. That sort of thing. And that's what I'm going to get into. So what could I already see on the game map? So as you can see, this is my thought process when I was checking out what I could see on the game maps and trying to figure out what I could potentially see in the levels that I hadn't already. Some of it was pretty easy, looking at the starport from these other areas, it's very obvious. And I'll go into how I kind of figured out where things were in that area. But this applies to everything as I was going around, trying to figure out where they were in relation to each other, trying to get the right direction, and then noticing things as I go along. First place I try to figure out where everything was around it is the wall. The wall is massive, it's obvious, it's got two very distinguishable large landmarks that kind of just give it away. And so because of that, that was the main centerpiece for this journey. And then trying to see where the levels near it were. The wall itself is, I mean, it's a wall. You know, its shape is pretty obvious. However, it has two distinguished areas, the curved top area of the gate and the chunk of structure that fell down from the Rubiconian grid structures, which, like, you see it on at a distance and you're like, you know what that is. Very obvious. And the thing that kind of would deter me from considering that an area is near the wall is no snow. The climate is always snowy at the wall throughout the entire game. So what's nearby in Bellius, where the wall is? You've got South Bellius, which is grid 135, the contaminated city, and the dam complex. They can all see the wall, and they're like the starting areas that you're in initially for the first part of the game. North Bellius is the Baus facility and the watch point. And then you have the wall in Central Bellius, but North and Central Bellius are actually roughly the same area. You have West Bellius, which is on the same continent, but in level, it's so far away that they haven't put anything in that you can see it. You cannot see anything in West Bellius to or from South, North, or Central. And then naturally, you got stuff on another continent, like the PCA base, and I was trying to figure out where Honest Brute was, and outer space. You know, you're not going to see anything. You're not going to see the wall from outer space. The wall in Central Bellius is the center point, like I've mentioned. And so looking on this map here, I've circled where the different areas are and kind of figured out what their relation is to each other on the map and then in the actual missions. So at the top, you've got North and Central Bellius, which are basically next to each other. You've got Western Bellius, which is not actually close to the other two areas. And you've got South Bellius, which is the baby's first missions. They're very close together, and they can actually see North Central Bellius. Southern Bellius has grid 135, contaminated city, and the dam complex, like I mentioned. The interesting about them is that they're all very, very close to each other, and grid 135 and contaminated city can see each other like relatively easily, sort of, and I'll get into that in a bit. The dam complex can't see the other two, but they can all see the wall, which I'm going to get into in a bit again. In Northern Bellius, and I've put a little marker here for where the wall is, so you can see, oh, yep, that's the wall. You've got the Baus facility and the watch point. And as you can see, this is actually very close to each other on the map. They're not actually very far away from each other, and you'll see what each of them can see in relation to one another. Now, the first discovery I got into on this journey, as I'm just going through the maps, was realizing where the explosion happened after finishing the watch point. The coral comes out of the facility, affects you, you get air, and you fight off Balteus, and then you have a debrief with Walter. Now, Walter's debrief in the top right shows the explosion area immediately after. All of Chapter 1, you have this corner just sticking out into the ocean, and then after that, immediately in Chapter 2, you can see the exploded area. The reason I bring this up is because I didn't actually realize that there was a real proper explosion initially. And I was kind of confused by Walter's debrief as well. Turns out what he meant was the coral that came out past you went over to that area, coalesced and exploded, and then went off wherever. It's a bit unclear to me the details on that, but that might be another video. That might be something else someone else can explain. This is just something I noticed and I was like, oh, I did not realize that. And it shows because the explosion area and the North Bellius watch point area is like completely different spots, as you can see. The second thing is the map misleads you. These areas in South Bellius seem really far from North Central Bellius and West Bellius. They seem like they're making a bit of a triangle with how distant they are from each other. But the reality is the dam complex, the contaminated city, and grid 135 can all see the dam. And it's pretty obvious. I've circled it in yellow. You can't miss it. The grid 086 and the Strider cannot see any of this. I had a good look around. I could not see it. I would give screenshots, but it'd be kind of pointless because you're literally seeing nothing. You got snowy areas in South, North, Central, but it's like desert in the west. The contaminated city and the dam complex mountain. This is kind of my third discovery overall, but I realized this more towards the end of this project. And so I kind of had to pull together a whole bunch of stuff for this kind of quickly because I spent hours just figuring this out and it was kind of hectic. So in some of these, you'll see encircled in red the dam, just to make it a bit obvious. Left, bottom right. That's the curve of the wall. The question marks are just, I think this might be the same structure. It probably isn't, but I'm going to put it up there anyway. And the whole thing that this is about is they all share the same mountain, and you don't realize it's just playing through normally. Because it's not obvious, you know? You look around, you're like, oh yeah, I can see that in the distance. Oh yeah, I can see that in the distance. But you don't realize how close everything is until you recognize the central landmark to all of them, including the wall. So in this middle picture that I'm showing in the top, it is just the wall's perspective looking up the mountain. And these arrows show that directionality on the maps and in the levels of the mountain. These are what you're looking from and to relative to the wall. So the bottom of the arrow is the angle that you're looking up the mountain on the wall level. And it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. The fact that it's just there and you don't realize is hectic. You can see from most of these screenshots the walls, but the dam complex and the contaminated city can't see each other. Grid 135 can see the city and the wall, but the contaminated city can't actually see grid 135, which I get into later. Forgive the wall of text. So this is just kind of all the little things I've kind of noticed and then put together for this kind of discovery. Figuring this out, realizing, oh, it's all in this tight-knit zone because of this one mountain. And the main map that you see doesn't actually show the mountain very well, if at all, really. I think the map was meant to be different. Now, a lot of this just confirms everything else around the place, but one of the biggest things I want to show you is that the wall, you can't actually see any of these areas. They can see the wall can't see them. In these red squares with exclamation points are where I would think the contaminated city and the dam complex should be, and they're just not. This is the correct angle based on what I've seen in the other levels, and they're just not there. I've had a good look around, I've zoomed in, I've tried a bunch of different things, and I just could not see it. And this is actually a recurring problem with the wall itself. The fourth thing, Carla isn't far from the RLF. So the very first mission, you go to find that area to go across to the other continent, infiltrating grid 086. I was just starting to look around in my journey, and I just saw it there. And I never looked back when I first landed before, and then I just saw it, and I was like, holy crap, there it is. And when I went to go check it out on the Strider level itself in the replay, I realized, oh, these landmarks are also the same, because I took screenshots as I went along. The blue lines are the roads, which might be a bit hard to see, but the curves are the same in the top right and the bottom left. And then circled in red, you can see the same building structures and the same hole in the ground. Sorry, the crater. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. And no matter where you kill the Strider, it's always in the same spot. Doesn't matter which Strider mission you do, I don't think. It's always there. Some areas don't actually have anything to show, and it's worse than you might initially think. So, starting on the left, you can see the wall, very obviously from the Baus facility, but the wall, when you just go up from the Juggernaut and you just can't see anything. It's just water, pure water. The Baus facility can also see the watch point. I'm pretty sure that's meant to be watch point. That's a mistake. Whoops. In any case, seeing the watch point over there, great, cool. The Baus facility can see everything, but the watch point can't actually see the Baus facility or the wall. It can't see either of them. And lastly, and most egregiously in my opinion, the contaminated city, where you land after falling into grid 1 through 5, can't see grid 1 through 5. It just does not exist. And this is something I've noticed in this entire game, is that the grid structures don't actually show up as they are when you're playing in them. When you look back at them, or from a different angle in other levels, they're just kind of random. They're not the actual structure you saw at low poly at a distance. They're just not there. Bit of a sad fact, I realized, and I was a little bit disappointed. But that was something I was looking for, and so that's something I found. The PCA base, kind of obvious, a lot of it, but there are little things where I was like, oh, that's interesting, oh, that's different. So I'm going to start off with Engbrit Tunnel, it's called, where you go in, you have like the coral, not explosion, but eruption, and then you go back later and do like a little survey of the wrecks in there. That is right next to the spaceport. It is like, I'll show some photos soon, but is next to it. You've got the area that you kill the worm, and it's actually the same area as where you fight the cataphract. I didn't realize initially. I was trying to figure out where the cataphract was. Killing the worm was pretty obvious. But the cataphract, you have this snow mist all around, and so it makes it a lot tougher. However, taking screenshots of the structures in the distance, I came to realize, yes, it's in roughly the same area. It wasn't where I thought it was, but they're just in the same area, which makes me kind of question why didn't the worm show up sooner, but I imagine it's just because the PCA didn't want it to show up sooner. More stuff in the PCA. So again, it's probably the best laid out zone, and this is just the evidence of it. So on the left, you can see where the watchtower is and where you are during the fight against the worm, which is defending it. You can just straight up see it, and your fight with the worm isn't that far from the spaceport, which means that the watchtower was like just there the whole time. Like, you literally could have gone there at any time in like a minute if you just boosted over there, but didn't have like the artificial walls in the game. In the different missions, like attack the root refueling station, in the tunnel mission, and from the spaceport, you can kind of see all these connections in the Engbrit Tunnel and how it's just straight right there. Like, it's just under the spaceport. And I've got these little stars and arrows to show you where these AC locations are for these screenshots, you know? You've got the edge of the cliff right there for the tunnel view where you are. And then if you look from above down at the tunnel, that's just at the cliff face right there in a later mission when you're attacking the spaceport. What's near the PCA? Well, the Xylem. I thought it was just some random place in the ocean until I had a closer look. And when I saw where it was in relation to other stuff, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it seems like a lot of the later game stuff is all on this side of the map, you know, on this continent region. The PCA base is kind of obvious because you get that little waterway through it. The underground area as well is very close to it, and that's what I spotted at one point as well. But it's actually like weirdly far away, despite the fact you just go straight down and kind of into it. I don't know why, but something I noticed. Something I decided to share. And then you got Rusty. So in finding Honest Brute, I figured out where Rusty was shooting from. And he's actually in a far more reasonable spot than I thought he was. I thought he was shooting from another continent because of where I thought Honest Brute was. And so you're seeing him fire from the horizon is a lot more believable, especially when you realize where he is. But it's Honest Brute that threw me for a loop because I could not figure out where he was off the top of my head, and seeing where he actually was kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, what the heck? And you can see like the waterway is the same on the map on the left, and you can see where the actual mission is pretty clearly. Trying to find Brute was irritating and interesting. So my initial thought the entire time I was playing it just casually was, oh, he knows Carla, so he's probably near her. You know, he probably took her stuff and ran a couple grids over, you know. But no, he actually went pretty far. So rather than being a grid over, he ran to another continent where there's everything's just wrecked and mostly destroyed. And I came to the realization he must have taken his stuff and just launched himself across the continent like we did. But while trying to find him, eventually I'm like, what the heck? And I just started playing through the missions normally, not in replay, just straight through the game to take screenshots of the maps to figure out where he was. And then I was like, oh, he's over there. And I was shocked. I was like, what the heck? Could not believe it. Because when I'm on the level, you're looking around, it's just wasteland. There's nothing there. And so that threw me for a loop. It was kind of like, oh, holy crap. I wish the maps were a bit clearer where everything was. But I think the fact that you don't choose all these missions all at once, they go through progressively, you don't really see where they are in relation to a lot of other stuff unless you go looking for it. Underground. Now this is a fun bit where it's a bit more casual, a bit more like Dark Souls exploration, where one of the things I noticed, and I wanted to check this out pretty quickly when I was doing this, was the tunnel in the escape mission or the alternative survey mission. So when you're trying to escape, it's blocked, you got gunk in it and a like iron gate in front of it. But then when you're doing the alternative survey mission, which is technically before that point, it's open. It's clear and you just go through down it, which kind of shocked me. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so that's something I discovered. The descent into Institute City, though, and the Institute City itself, you can't see each other. I tried looking for quite a while for the little cliff face with the hole where you come out of, but it's just not there. And I know for a fact that this is roughly where it should be, because the angle of the structure, the main structure in Institute City, is on the same angle, which means you're coming from the same direction. You should be able to see some landmarks that are the same. I did not see any. Like, literally none. The bridge, the water, the giant hole that you fight in, like, none of it was there from the point of view of the descent. And from the Institute City, there's just no hole there. Now, this is something I discovered pretty early on in my playing of Armored Core 6. The reason I bring it up is because I did actually actively go look for it at one point. And I thought it was really interesting trying to figure out where it was back at the time. Because when you go through on New Game Plus Plus, you go all the way through and you find this big open tunnel where you fight Snail and Iguazu. And I'm like, where is this? I feel like this big hole with open air should be pretty obvious. And I never saw it. That's really weird. So I looked for it. And what do you know? It's actually there. It's just way off in the distance. So you travel close to that area, probably killing the ACs first so you can get a bit closer, and just going straight up, and then you can just see it easily. And it makes me realize that the tunnel is actually a bit longer than I expected, because I thought that hole would have been way closer, but it's actually all the way out there. But it's still there. It's genuinely in the level, which I thought was cool. The Xylem. Now, there's not really much to say about the Xylem. Just a few little tidbits of, oh, that's where you are, or, oh, that's interesting. So, when you're destroying the drive block, for example, if you actually have a look around instead of focusing on the boss fight, you're actually in the mouth of the ship at the front. You're just hanging out at the front of the ship. And I didn't realize that when I first looked. I was like, oh, that's where I am. And so I thought I'd share that as well, because I was like, oh, what do you know? On the other side, you've got the two missions, intercept the corporate forces and eliminate Cinder Kala. They're basically just in reverse of each other. Same rough pathway, they end at different spots, but they share the same level layout, just in reverse. Now that's kind of all the main stuff I found while exploring and trying to figure stuff out and trying to see where things were. And to be clear, a lot of this took like several hours. Like, it took me a while to find or confirm that certain things weren't there. Realizing that the grids, like their structures, weren't actually there, the ones where the missions are on, was quite disappointing. But my final thoughts on it, was it consistent? Sometimes. Some things were really consistent. Like the war was the biggest consistency that I was like, oh, that's always there. Could a normal player figure these things out? I'd say so. I figured them out. I'm close to normal. Were some areas of it lazy? Yeah. But I don't blame him for it. the reality is, if you're trying to build a game in a reasonable amount of time, there are some things that are better left in a state of just believable. So try to see grid, I think it was 135, from the contaminated city. I realized it's believable that it's up there because I spent so long looking for it, because I thought, oh, it must be there. I can see the grids. But the reality is it just wasn't there. And I did think it was lazy, but this is one of those things where I'm like, I don't blame them for it. I'd probably do something similar, really, especially if you have a time crunch. Did some areas show real effort? Yeah, absolutely. Lots of areas showed real effort. I think most people agree that the levels are often beautiful. And I think the main thing is the levels themselves are generally quite consistent. It's just the greater map as a whole that's not overly consistent. But I think that's more to do with the fact that it's actually relatively a small game. How many oh or ah moments were there? A bunch. You know, figuring out where Brute was O, and then going you know, and seeing where Rusty was probably shooting from. Gotcha. So there was a few of those. Was I happy finding some stuff? Yeah. Some of it was like really cool. Seeing the Strider there, I was like, wow, that is nice. Was it satisfying? Mostly. Some inconsistencies were unsatisfying, but finding the things that was very satisfying, and I think it kind of credits From Software in how they build their games. Even if they aren't putting in a lot of relative effort, they're still putting in a lot of good quality. Which kind of leads to the annoyance with the Rubicon structures not being consistent. I don't want to say I'm upset. I'm a little annoyed, but it's just one of those things where I'm like, I get it. No worries. It'd be cool if it was, though. But anyway, those are my final thoughts on it. I've got a bunch of different ideas and more videos I'd like to do. I'm already working on weapon loadout doctrines, which is the idea of how do you think about putting an AC together? You know, what strategically makes it effective rather than just simply what are the best weapons, what's pure meta. Because you can make lots of meta builds within one doctrine quite easily. The idea is, well, I'll get into that in its own video. Look forward to it. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. My apologies if my cough or sniffles have come through. I've been a bit unwell, but thank you for watching. I've definitely been the fun uncle, the Watchman. So thank you and good day.